Y'all voted for Illium? You're getting it right now. Illium is a unique mage in that they're a very aerial class, instead of being bound to the ground for most of their attacks, and have one of the most unique mobility skills in the entire game. They also are extremely capable bossers, grinders, and have insane support that benefits most boss parties. If you're willing to look past their complicated looking kit on the surface and understand it a bit better, you'll come to find it's a lot more straightforward than most others would have you believe, and an insanely capable class in everything they set out to do. So let's get into it. Briefly going over the beginner tab, the only thing here right now is magic conversion, which converts half your equipment's attack power to magic attack. Not your weapon though, weirdly enough. So all your armors and other equips you'll get in the future will get you a little boost for magic attack at least. Also, it only converts up to 20% of your weapon's base attack power, so it's not too overpowered. Anyways, first job gives quite a unique mobility skill that mostly acts like a mage teleport when used on the ground, and on ropes and ladders. Hold it while in the air though, and it turns into a mini fly-around skill, similar to Ho-Young's Nimbus Cloud. There's also these two passives, one of which that also gives 2 attack and magic attack per stack it has. You get said stacks through this attack, Radiant Orb. All it does right now is fly straight forward and gives a Lucent Brand stack, and slightly buffs this attack, Radiant Javelin. This is your main attack that will be pairing with most of your kit throughout everything you do. Click it to send it flying out, and have it bounce between enemies a few times, every click. It also does more damage to normal enemies. Lastly, X is a little robot summon that goes towards enemies and attacks them when you attack. The more it hits, the more damage it does. Second job is where the clickiness comes in for Illium, because this is where you get Deploy Crystal, which summons a spherical crystal that flies in front of you every time you click the skill. Click up in the skill button and it teleports right on top of you. Click down in the skill button and it teleports a set distance in front of you, the same as just pressing the skill normally, but without flying to said location. The crystal also makes your Radiant Orb home in on it, no matter which way you're facing, as long as it's within range. When you attack the crystal with Radiant Javelin or Orb, it casts Reaction Destruction or Domination, respectively, both of which have a 6-second cooldown and simply attack around the crystal's location. Domination, however, gives an Umbral Brand when it attacks, which lowers enemy defense and increases your damage dealt against Umbral Branded enemies for a few seconds. Crystal Battery is just a charge meter bar thing on your screen that builds up when you attack with Javelin or Orb. When it builds up enough charges, you can use this attack, Vortex of Light, that just attacks around the crystal. Lastly, this passive that reduces damage taken and absorbs MP while attacking, this attack speed buff, and another robo summon, Machina. He orbits your crystal and attacks enemies both while sitting still and whenever the crystal is repositioned, like a whole separate attack of him doing damage to enemies he flies through. When attacking, he also sucks enemies in. Third job is mostly just these passives boosting your typical stats, and upgrades to most of your previous job skills. Extra stacks for Lucent Brand, Umbral Brand now has 3 stacks and a multiplier depending on how many stacks it has, Crystal Battery gets bigger, and both Destruction and Domination get shorter cooldowns. You also get this toggle that gives you a little bit more distance with your teleport on the ground. Crystal Skill Resonance makes a beam periodically appear between you and your crystal, restoring some health and giving a Lucent Brand to you and all party members, or putting Umbral Brands on enemies in between you and your crystal, up to 15 times. You can't use it back to back though, and it forces you to reset your crystal battery before it can be used again. Same with Vortex of Light actually. How do you reset your battery? By filling up your battery to max charges, and using crystal skill Wings of Glory. Your screen will get a weird cyan, almost alien-looking border when your battery is at max capacity. Click Wings of Glory, and you'll be flying fast. You can even get more distance by using Teleport while this skill is active. It also upgrades your Javelin to Winged Javelin, which does more damage and explodes on contact. After the 20 seconds of Wings is up, your battery will be fully reset, and you can use all your crystal skills again as normal. No cooldown on any of your crystal skills, it's all dependent on how many charges you have and if it's been reset. That's it. If you wanted to end this skill early for any reason, just click it again. Fourth job is, okay, a bunch more upgrades just like third. More stacks for your brands, upgrades to both Radiant Orb and Javelin, with Javelin now sending off 2 splintered shards per attack, upgrading during Wings of Glory, and your battery has a new charge added to it. This is the new skill that now also charges your battery, Longinus Spear. It, much like Radiant Orb, flies out at your crystal, dealing damage to everything in its path. If there's no nearby crystal or it's not summoned, it just flies straight, 15-second cooldown. You also get a couple upgrades to Wings of Glory. Resonant Wings is a passive that automatically places Umbral Brands on enemies and Lucent Brands on allies. Vortex Wings is an attack exclusive to Wings of Glory that can only be used once during its duration. It does big damage and places 5 Umbral brand stacks on enemies it hits. You also get one new passive for Mastery, the Flora equivalent of Maple Warrior and Hero's Will, this buff that instantly charges your Crystal Battery, 3-minute cooldown, and lastly, a new crystal skill, Deus. It uses X and Machina together to create a bigger robot that makes up to 5 satellites that attack nearby enemies and lasts for 30 seconds. Said satellite's power is the same as X's. Hyperskills time! Hyperskills time! Longinus Zone simply makes 7 Longinus Spears attack in a big area in a hexagonal shape right in front of you. That's also an iframe while being casted, 2-minute cooldown. Divine Wrath is the Flora equivalent to Epic Adventure, 10% damage, applies to all Flora classes in your party, 1-minute uptime, 2-minute cooldown. Lastly, skills-wise, Crystalline Bulwark is another iframe. This time it counts towards your whole party. Initially on its own it lasts for 4 seconds, and goes up the more Lucent brand stacks you have on you, up to 10 total stacks, lasting a combined total duration of 10 seconds. 3-minute cooldown, and I believe this is the longest lasting party-wide iframe in the whole game. Extremely useful in party play. For hyper passives, you should know by now that Javelin is your main attack, so that's why you get everything for Javelin. Reinforce for damage, Extra Strike for an extra line of damage, and Boss Rush for boss damage. As for Longinus upgrades, avoid all of them. Their damage increases are extremely minimal and all get outclassed one way or another in GMS by the Deus hyper passives. Specifically for Deus, you'll want Reinforce and Extra Strike, which ups damage in lines for both Deus himself and the satellites he summons. Now let's move on to 5th job. Starting off, Crystal Gate simply makes a portal at 3 locations of your choosing, yes even in the air, that lets you teleport through them anywhere in a single map. 2-second cooldown between teleports through all gates, and 5-second cooldown for the last gate you initially used to teleport. It also gives a slight magic attack buff when nearby a gate, as well as an extra attack when you attack, with a 1.5-second cooldown in between each, 5 times per buff. The buff thankfully refreshes periodically whenever you're nearby a gate. 3-minute cooldown, which can go down to about half that, depending on if it ends before the duration. Also, the duration starts off at 2 minutes and 11 seconds at level 1, going up to 2 minutes and 40 seconds at max level. Crystalline Spirit places down another crystal at the current location of where your main crystal is when you use it. It builds up a charge every 20 seconds, holds up to 2 charges, can be placed down once every 2.5 seconds, and each spirit does reduced damage for reaction skills. Unless, as the skill itself says, it's the 5th skill. This is talking about a 5th job reaction skill I'll get to in just a second. If you hold down and click this skill, it uses both charges up, placing both spirits down at the same spot. This is useful for concentrating damage in one spot like for elites or bossing, but it's mainly used for using this skill's secondary effect, which happens when you have spirits out and use Wings of Glory. Each crystalline consumed gives extra damage during wings for whatever the remaining duration of each spirit is. Crystal Ignition is a skill that you hold down and it shoots a giant beam in front of you. You can move around while casting it, except you can't jump. It also places a damage over time on enemies hit by it, and extra damage to bosses. Shoot this skill at your crystal, and it bursts 3 quick beams in the direction you're facing in 1-second intervals. You can even combine this with your crystalline spirits for even more beams, without the damage reduction penalty of spirit, and during Wings of Glory, the beams just appear automatically, even without the crystal. 3-minute cooldown. Templar Knight is another robo-summon that stays in place and can fire beams forward on both sides of him, one at a time, focusing on either wherever the boss currently is, or whichever direction has more enemies. If your crystal battery charge thingy whatevers reaches 3 bars, or also while using Wings of Glory, the final damage of this skill is doubled, 3-minute cooldown. For shared nodes, starting with the ones all mage classes get, obviously we gotta start with Mana Overload. It's a toggle that increases your final damage for everything, at the cost of consuming more max mana per skill you cast. 1-minute cooldown from the moment you toggle it on, going down to 30 seconds at max level. Ethereal form is like a pseudo iframe, more akin to Darksight, while also giving super stance and reducing damage taken. It won't prevent all one-shots, but does protect from quite a few. 1-minute cooldown. And lastly, the Flora nodes. Grandest Goddess's Blessing builds up 1 charge every 4 minutes and holds up to 2 charges. For Illium, it converts some of your equip's attack to magic attack, not your weapon though. It also gives some flat attack and magic attack too. And finally, Conversion Overdrive is the last node we're talking about. It too builds up charges, 1 every 3 minutes, and also holds up to 2. When used, it increases your damage and gives you an extra attack alongside your other attacks called Spellstorm that attacks nearby enemies every few seconds. There's a few ways to make Illium easier to play. Let's start with explaining they only have about 3 skills they use regularly, all of which can also be used while jumping and gliding: Radiant Javelin and Orb, and Deploy Crystal. Everything else is either buffs, summons, or situational skills usually used in bosses. As for some other attacks, namely Longinus Spear and Vortex Wings, you won't want to be using these much at all. Longinus Spear has good damage and range, but a long cast time, so you'd mainly want to use it when an enemy is out of range and you wanted to hit them. Vortex Wings you'd think is used in bosses as part of your burst, but it isn't, mainly because it also has a long cast time, and doesn't do too great of damage for how long it keeps you locked in place. It's barely worth using while grinding either. If you ever wanted to charge your crystal battery fast, all you have to do is place your crystal in front of you, and mash Radiant Javelin and Orb repeatedly. The animation for one cancels the other, so the attacks come out slightly faster. This is mainly useful right before entering a boss, so you can come right out of the gate doing big damage to them with Wings of Glory. Speaking of bossing, don't forget that each of your crystalline spirits, when you enter Wings of Glory, give a huge damage buff, just as long as they're out and summoned. At max level, each gives 35% extra damage. If you place one spirit about 20 seconds before you plan to burst, you can then pop the down use of the skill once the second charge comes back up, and cast Wings for 70% extra damage for the first 10 seconds, going down to 35% after that. This is because each spirit consumed has its own separate duration, depending on when they were summoned. So if you place 2 separate crystalline spirits within a 30-second window and pop Wings, you'll have 2 separate buffs that expire at different times. Ideally, you'd want this for a full burst, because once your Wings end the first time, both spirits will be available, and then you can use Flash Crystal Battery and the down use of Crystalline Spirit, and have both buffs up for the second use of Wings. Also, don't forget you can teleport around during Wings. That, and if you're jumping in the air when you cast Wings, it'll prevent you from flying straight upward, and instead just pop in place. In bosses that have some verticality to them, like Damien when he goes up into the air, you can reach him from the ground easily by placing your crystal in the air. Combine this with a crystalline spirit below, keep spamming Javelin and Orb, and you're hitting him with both attacks, casting Resonance every so often. This is because Radiant Orb will always try to fly to your crystal, while Javelin doesn't exclusively seek it out. Let's go over how you can support your party in bosses. First, healing. Crystal Resonance restores 10% max health to party members touching the beam in between you and your crystal. Second, iframe. Once your Lucent Brand stacks are at 10, pop Crystalline Bulwark and your whole party is safe for 10 whole seconds. Usually you'll want to save this not for when you're about to die, but when you feel the party might suddenly have multiple deaths in a short span of time, like for Lucid Dragon or Lotus's Part 2 Electricity and such. Want to know an extremely simple, easy way to grind? First, find any map of your choosing, preferably one with 3 tiers of platforms, and stand on the middle one. Go towards one edge of the screen, and place your crystal not quite at the very edge, but just around where enemies frequent. Then, teleport twice in the opposite direction, making sure not to walk too much. Just tap teleport twice, and click Crystalline Spirit once. Now just place your crystal, and teleport back towards the Crystalline Spirit once, and keep spamming Radiant Javelin and Radiant Orb. Congratulations, you're now clearing most of the map. Combine this with crystal gates on top of where you stand for even more attacks, and you're melting everything you can see on screen. It's a little tricky to set up the first few times, but if you can get the hang of it, this is a great way to grind without having to pay much attention every 20 or so seconds. When your battery fills up, you can use Wings to just loot around and attack freely for a little bit. Here's a neat little trick. During the opening of Illium's story, your hair is completely different, covering your face and all. Before you hit second job, and/or while you're still in the beginning Illium zone, you can register this hair to your salon, and use it even after you leave the area when it changes your hair to something completely different. This hair usually isn't available anywhere else, so it's worth mentioning for those that wanted to keep it. For inner ability, for the first line you'll absolutely want attack speed +1. Illium is a class that's heavily reliant on hitting that attack speed cap, and benefits greatly from reaching it. This could be achieved by using a Monster Park Green Pot, decent speed infusion, Illium's booster, and attack speed +1 inner ability. For second and third lines, depending on what you want to do, you'll either want boss and abnormal status damage for bossing, or any mix of meso rate, drop rate, or crit rate for grinding. For link skills, you'll want the typical mix of Mercedes, Evan, and Aran for grinding, combined with whatever damage links for one-shotting. Something looking like this. For bossing, more standard damage dealing links like Demon Slayer, Luminous, Angelic Buster for burst, etc. If you're capped for crit rate, you could swap out Phantom Link for something like resistance or more damage, like Kain or Kali, or Cygnus Blessing. Illiums have 2 sets of Trinodes they mainly want to focus on. the first being Radiant Javelin, Reaction Destruction, and Machina and Reaction Domination. These skills will be out and used constantly, especially Javelin, and just beef up your damage for your main spammable skills by a ton. The second set is Umbral Brand 3, Deus, and Longinus Spear. For this one, Umbral and Deus take way more importance, but since Longinus isn't used often, you can largely get something else, as it's mostly a filler skill that's used sometimes. Your only other options would be Longinus Zone or Vortex Wings, so not much else to really focus on getting. Longinus Zone does big damage, but you'll usually want that saved for the iframe. For Burst/BA, you'll first want to charge up your crystal battery up to max charges. Then obviously make sure you're buffed up. Summons like X and Machina are out too. Place your crystal where the boss is, and your crystal gates are nearby to provide their buff. Place down one crystalline spirit and do damage for 20 seconds. You could also place it down while prepping everything else too if you wanted. Pop your cooldown buffs and summons like Divine Wrath, Deus, Conversion Overdrive, Grandest Goddess's Blessing, and Templar Knight. Once 20 seconds has passed and you're back to having 2 crystalline spirit charges, place another one down, pop AB Link, use Wings of Glory, hold Crystal Ignition, and then spam Javelin, which is now the upgraded form during your wings. After it runs out, you can also pop Flash Crystal Battery, resummon Deus, use Downing Crystalline Spirit to summon 2, then immediately get back into wings again, spamming Javelin some more. Shorten down. Buffs, summons, Crystal on Boss, 1 Crystalline Spirit, cooldown buffs and summons. After 20 seconds, place another Crystalline Spirit, AB Link, Wings of Glory, Crystal Ignition, spam Javelin. After wings ends, use Flash Crystal Battery, resummon Deus, down in Crystalline Spirit, wings again, and Javelin some more. This is quite a lot to remember for a burst, but essentially just buff and cycle your Crystalline Spirits properly to maximize damage during wings, and then repeat similarly a second time with some key differences. If that's too complicated for you to remember right now, you could always just focus on everything that isn't the crystalline juggling until you're comfortable enough and get the hang of it, but it does contribute a ton of damage to your overall burst. On the surface, Illium is one of those classes that seem big-brained just looking at how they play alone, but really aren't too hard to grasp or understand. Just a little different from literally everything else currently available in the game, but making this guide made me understand how they work much more. Hopefully this guide helped you realize they can be broken down into a few buttons, with some being insanely good supportive skills. Thanks for watching, thanks to the Illium Discord for letting me lurk around and having extremely detailed discussions about Illium and their differences between both GMS and KMS, and thank you to the ex-Illium in my life that helped give some tips for this class. I'll admit, Illium isn't quite my playstyle, but I've come to appreciate the cooler aspects of them, like just flying and exploding during their burst, or saving an entire party with their big ol' iframe. If there's more classes you want to see me cover, suggest some down in the comments. If you want to learn about more Maple classes, or just like these videos, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm starting to get through a lot of classes in this game, and I do plan on covering them all eventually, so look forward to me going over your potential new main in the future. That's all.